The historical mistrust that exists between Iran and the US stems from past experiences.
Donald Trump said the US was holding direct talks with Iran. The aim, a deal over Tehran's nuclear program.
Doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious, and we're dealing with them directly.
Tensions between the U.S. and Iran are growing as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard is now on high alert amid an increasing American military presence in the Middle East.
We have weaponry that nobody has any idea what it is, and it is the most powerful weapons in the world that we have. More powerful.
Two U.S. aircraft carrier strike groups simultaneously move into strategic positions. A strong warning signal to Iran? The simultaneous presence of two carrier strike groups, the USS Harry S. Truman with its mission extended, and the USS Carl Vinson just arriving in position, is a move showing that the U.S. is urgently adjusting its military strategy. Equipped with full offensive aircraft such as the A-10 Thunderbolt II, specialized in tank destruction, and the versatile F/A-18s in air combat, Washington is boosting its long-range strike capabilities. This is not only a response to attacks on commercial and naval ships in the Red Sea, but also a clear message. Any escalation by Iran will be met with overwhelming military force. Maintaining two carrier strike groups in the region at once is rare in peacetime. This indicates that the U.S. is not merely preparing, but combat ready. Urgent deployment of Patriot systems and military equipment from the Pacific to the Middle East. Not limited to a show of force at sea, the U.S. is also expanding the battlefield in the air and on land by rapidly deploying the Patriot missile defense system, along with other key military equipment. The transfer via 73 C-17 transport flights from the Pacific to the Middle East reflects the scale and urgency of the campaign. Patriot is not just a defensive tool, but also a shield, enabling the U.S. and allies to confidently maintain their position against Iran's ballistic missile threats. Shifting troops from the Indo-Pacific to the Middle East shows the U.S. is temporarily putting aside competition with China to prioritize controlling the Iran hotspot, a strategic decision that is far from easy. B-2. Spirit stealth bombers placed on standby. Strategic strike risk increases sharply. When the B-2 Spirit, America's most advanced stealth bomber, is deployed to Diego Garcia, the signal is unmistakable. This aircraft can bypass all modern radar systems and hit targets with high precision from long distances. Positioning the B-2 within Iran's range indicates the U.S. is building a strategic nuclear deterrent, a move not made for empty threats, but to be executed if necessary. Choosing Diego Garcia, an isolated base in the Indian Ocean, shows that the U.S. wants a location immune to threats, thereby ensuring secrecy and effectiveness for a potential deep strike operation into Iran's heartland if the worst-case scenario unfolds. 40,000 U.S. troops spread across the Middle East, an unprecedented move since the Iraq War. Not since 2003 have American troops been so numerous and well-equipped in the Middle East as they are now. With 40,000 personnel, warships, aircraft, and defense systems deployed simultaneously, the Pentagon is establishing a military belt to halt any potential attacks from Tehran. This is not merely a show of force, but actual combat preparation, a bold and unambiguous warning. This move raises a major question. Is the U.S. preparing for a prolonged war, or is this a preemptive strike meant to force Iran to the negotiating table from a weakened position? Escalating tensions stem from the collapse of the nuclear deal. The current crisis did not erupt overnight, but originated from the Trump administration's 2018 decision to withdraw from the historic nuclear agreement signed under Obama. That move shattered the fragile trust between the two nations and enabled Iran to accelerate its nuclear program. Instead of weakening Iran, the decision unintentionally spurred its development of deterrent capabilities, including uranium enrichment close to weapons-grade levels. The failure to maintain a long-term diplomatic channel is turning the Middle East into a new powder keg, where a single action could trigger a domino effect across the region. China's rapid leap in the global nuclear arms race. While the majority of the world's 12,000-plus nuclear warheads belong to the US and Russia, China is emerging as a highly ambitious new player. Under President Xi Jinping's Chinese Century military strategy, Beijing is accelerating the modernization of its nuclear arsenal with a clear goal: to achieve strategic deterrence parity by 2049, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Analytical perspective: China's deeper involvement in the nuclear race is not just defensive, it reflects a growing geopolitical ambition, aiming to shift the global power balance long held by the US and Russia since the Cold War. Secret US-Iran talks in Oman. A fragile chance amid crisis. After years of hiatus and rising tension, the US and Iran have unexpectedly agreed to direct talks in Oman, a rare move offering a glimmer of hope in a boiling region. However, behind closed doors, deep disagreements over nuclear issues, sanctions, and regional influence remain, making the outcome of negotiations highly uncertain. Strategic insight: Oman once again plays the role of silent mediator in the Middle East. But no matter how well-intentioned, if the issues of trust and mutual demands aren't resolved, talks may serve more to delay war than to deliver true peace. The US unleashes economic sanctions, a tightening trap for Iran. With a strategy of winning without firing a shot, the US imposed sanctions on one Indian citizen and 4 companies in the UAE, accusing them of providing financial and technological support to Iran. This move aims to exert maximum economic pressure to compel Tehran to make concessions at the nuclear negotiation table. Harsh warning from Trump: if dialogue fails, war is almost certain. Former President Donald Trump did not hesitate to issue tough rhetoric. If negotiations collapse, Iran will face unprecedented consequences. Simultaneously, the US continues deploying advanced military assets, from defense systems to bombers, as if already prepared for the worst-case scenario. Strategic insight: Trump's statements serve a dual blade: a psychological blow to Iran and an appeal to US voters through a strong foreign policy image. However, this strategy risks making compromise harder, as neither side wants to be seen as the loser at the negotiating table. USS Carl Vinson, a maritime pincer threatening Tehran. The Carl Vinson aircraft carrier, over 300 meters long, carrying more than 70 fighter jets and 6,000 troops, stands firm in waters near Iran. With advanced radar, modern defense systems, and rapid deployment capabilities, it is a floating nightmare for any naval or aerial ambition of Tehran in the Persian Gulf. Analysis: the Carl Vinson is not just a war machine, it is a mobile declaration of American maritime power. Its presence near Iran signals that in any conflict scenario, the US will strike first and can dominate the battlefield from the very first minute. USS Harry Truman, a stealthy weapon lurking in the Red Sea. More than just a combat support vessel, the USS Harry Truman also serves as a key surveillance and reconnaissance tool in the Red Sea, where Houthi rebels are ramping up activities. With nearly 90 aircraft, including FA-18 fighters, EA-18G electronic warfare planes, and E-2 Hawkeye reconnaissance aircraft, the carrier can launch preemptive strikes, wage electronic warfare, and dominate the skies within minutes. Positioning the Truman in the Red Sea shows that the U.S. is not only concerned with Iran, but is also closely monitoring proxy forces heating up the battlefield from Yemen. This is America's way of sending a message to both Tehran and armed groups. Wherever you are, we see you. B-2 Spirit, the undetectable terror in Iranian skies. The B-2 Spirit strategic bomber is a symbol of absolute military dominance. Capable of flying over 11,000 kilometers without refueling, carrying both nuclear and conventional weapons, and nearly invisible to radar, the B-2 is the ideal choice for deep strikes into enemy command centers, nuclear facilities, and leadership hubs. If Iran were ever struck without warning, the likely culprit would be the B-2. This weapon is not just about deterrence, it sends a message. Any target you have is within my reach before you even know it. The combat history of the B-2, a serious warning to Iran. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber is not just a technological marvel, but a proven nightmare in multiple real-world operations. From Kosovo to Afghanistan and later Iraq, the B-2 carried out intercontinental bombing missions without needing any forward bases. With its ability to strike accurately from high altitudes while remaining nearly undetected, it has destroyed enemy command centers, military infrastructure, and communication networks in surgical strike campaigns. For Iran, the B-2's combat record is a warning that cannot be ignored. Every critical point, no matter how deep inland or heavily defended, can be hit without warning. This renders traditional defense strategies ineffective if conflict truly breaks out. Iran quietly withdraws from Yemen, Houthis left isolated. A significant shift is unfolding behind the scenes. Over 200 U.S. airstrikes on Houthi positions in Yemen, combined with reports of Iranian military advisors pulling out, have created a noticeable power vacuum within the Tehran-backed insurgent ranks. Iran's reduced support for this group, once seen as the Islamic Republic's extended arm on the Arabian Peninsula, indicates that it is under immense pressure to scale back its involvement on multiple fronts. Iran may be choosing to shorten its front lines to conserve resources ahead of a possible direct confrontation with the U.S. However, this means abandoning allies, sparking resentment and chaos within the Houthis, a factor that could shift the power balance in Yemen in the near future. A peaceful scenario. Could a new nuclear deal cool down the Middle East? If Iran chooses to return to the negotiating table and reach a new nuclear deal with the U.S., the regional landscape could shift in a more positive direction. U.S. military presence would remain as a deterrent, but proxy forces like the Houthis would weaken due to the loss of support. This could restore security along the Red Sea's maritime route, which has been severely disrupted by prolonged conflict. Stability won't come overnight, but a meaningful agreement could create a reverse domino effect, easing tensions, reviving trade flows, lowering Iran-Saudi regional rivalry, and creating a safer investment climate across the Middle East. Despite America's large-scale show of force and advanced deterrence like the B-2, the window for diplomacy is still open. The negotiations in Oman, though tense and full of disagreement, remain the last hope for a bloodless resolution. However, one thing must be acknowledged. This is no longer a simple U.S.-Iran confrontation, but a strategic chessboard involving Israel, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and China, each with its own calculations. Overall perspective, the choice now is no longer between war and peace, but between lasting peace and artificial calm. A half-hearted agreement would merely postpone crisis, not solve it. The real issue is whether the parties are ready to talk in a spirit of compromise and rebuild the trust that has crumbled over nearly a decade. 4 p.m. 30 seconds to 4 p.m. 33 seconds. Global nuclear risk and Iran's pivotal role. The U.S. believes the 2015 nuclear deal, once hailed as a diplomatic triumph, was actually insufficient to stop Iran from getting closer to nuclear weapons. Currently, there are around 12,330 nuclear warheads in the world, most in the hands of Russia and the U.S. However, China, under President Xi Jinping's military modernization strategy, is closing the gap. In this picture, Iran becomes a risky puzzle piece, a nation with the technology, ambition, and strategic motive to enter the nuclear club. If Iran obtains a nuclear bomb, it would not only shatter Middle East security, but also collapse the global non-proliferation system established since World War II. This is a red line the U.S. cannot allow to be crossed. Iran rejects Trump's proposals. The deadlock continues. Despite multiple proposals made during President Trump's term, Tehran maintained a firm stance and rejected all options it viewed as unrealistic and imposed. However, an important meeting in Oman is being planned, opening the door for renewed direct talks, something rare over the past several years. Iran understands that rejection does not mean closing the door entirely. It continues to maintain a posture of conditional dialogue, both to buy time and retain initiative on the diplomatic chessboard. U.S. increases economic sanctions, strangling Iran's financial network. The U.S. Treasury has imposed sanctions on an Indian citizen and 4 companies based in the UAE, accusing them of helping Iran evade oil sanctions. This is part of a maximum pressure strategy aimed at crippling the underground financial system, sustaining Iran's military and nuclear apparatus. This is not simply a blow to Iran, but a warning to neutral or friendly nations. Any shady cooperation may be punished. An economic encirclement is tightening in parallel with rising military pressure. Trump's ultimatum. If talks fail, Iran will face severe consequences. Strong remarks from former President Donald Trump have intensified the situation. If Iran refuses to engage seriously in talks, the U.S. is ready to deploy military options and escalate sanctions. Yet, Tehran maintains an ambiguous stance, claiming readiness for negotiations but insisting on fair conditions, which the U.S. sees as delay tactics. This is a standoff between ground power and political pressure, where words could become actions, and any impatience could trigger a war. U.S. reinforces military presence. Tehran pushed to the brink. While diplomacy remains uncertain, the U.S. has deployed high-tech weapons and advanced military equipment to the Middle East, aiming to protect allies like Israel, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Missile defense systems, strategic bombers, and multiple warships form a shield ready for defense and retaliation if Iran crosses the line. This is a moment when every Iranian move is under the microscope. One wrong step could set off a chain reaction, and the U.S. seems to be creating a strategic no-go zone around Tehran to keep the crisis from spinning out of control. USS Carl Vinson nears the Gulf, a strategic deterrence card. The USS Carl Vinson, carrying over 70 aircraft, is a symbol of American power and rapid response capabilities. Over 300 meters long and hosting nearly 6,000 personnel, it was deployed to the Gulf as a clear military statement. The U.S. is ready for any scenario, from deterrence to direct combat. Carl Vinson is not just an aircraft carrier, it's a mobile floating base, capable of controlling air and sea within a range of hundreds of kilometers. Its presence near Iran is an act of high-level strategic pressure. Advanced weapons systems aboard the USS Carl Vinson, America's steel arm. The equipment on the Carl Vinson rivals any land-based base. From long-range radar, missile defense systems, steam catapults for quick takeoff, to a formidable combat air wing of FA-18s, Seahawk helicopters, and Hawkeye early warning aircraft. All form a complete mobile strike force ready to react in minutes. Tactical perspective. This is the kind of firepower that forces every adversary to think twice. Iran fully understands that once the Carl Vinson moves into attack position, most major bases could be hit in just the first hours of conflict. USS Harry S. Truman, shield and pincer force in the Red Sea. Rivaling the Carl Vinson, the USS Harry S. Truman, a nuclear-powered carrier, is operating near the Red Sea with nearly 90 aircraft of various types, FA-18s, EA-18G Growlers, and E-2 Hawkeyes. It plays a role in airspace control, naval activity surveillance, and pressure against proxy forces like the Houthis, Iran's close allies in Yemen. By positioning forces in the north via the Gulf, Carl Vinson, and the south via the Red Sea, Harry S. Truman, the U.S. is creating a three-dimensional pincer that makes it hard for Iran to maneuver if tensions spiral. Symbol 75. USS Harry S. Truman, and the silent warning in the Red Sea. The USS Harry S. Truman carries hull number CVN-75, a figure that is more than a code. It's a symbol of power and prestige for the U.S. fleet. With nuclear power allowing long-term combat operations, nearly 90 aircraft and surveillance systems, its presence in the Red Sea is more than a show of force. To groups like the Houthis, this vessel is a giant ghost lurking above and below, capable of striking at any moment. Truman is not passing through, but maintaining regional deterrence. The number 75, also tied to U.S. Navy modern history, adds symbolic weight during this tense period. B-2 Spirit, the invisible assassin haunting Iran's skies. The B-2 Spirit strategic bomber is not only the peak of stealth technology, but a weapon that creates strategic dread. Able to bypass all modern air defenses and carry both nuclear and conventional weapons, the B-2 can launch preemptive strikes against command centers, nuclear plants, or military facilities deep within Iran, undetected before impact. Just a few B-2s in the region are enough to create asymmetric deterrence. Iran has no effective defense if the U.S. chooses a precise, stealthy aerial assault. Total stealth power, B-2, and unmatched tactical superiority, the B-2 Spirit can fly up to 11,000 kilometers without refueling, enabling it to strike targets in the Middle East from distant bases like Diego Garcia without needing frontline bases. Its body is coated with radar-absorbing material, rendering it nearly invisible to early warning systems. Additionally, it carries smart bombs and precision missiles capable of multiple key target strikes in a single mission. Its ability to appear unnoticed and vanish without a trace makes the B-2 the leading weapon in modern warfare, playing a key role in first strike missions that dismantle defenses before the enemy can respond. B-2's real-world combat record, power proven beyond theory. The B-2 has participated in major operations, from Kosovo and Afghanistan to Iraq. Though only 21 units exist, each B-2 appearance is tied to strikes at the strategic heart of enemies, without the need for nearby bases. Today, 6 B-2s are stationed at Diego Garcia, signaling that the U.S. is seriously preparing for all scenarios with Iran. Historically, the B-2 has never deployed when situations were stable. It marks the peak of tension, the first spear in any large-scale U.S. military intervention. Iran at a fateful crossroads. Deal or confrontation? Facing military pressure from multiple directions, Iran is being forced to choose. Accept a new nuclear deal or risk a U.S. preemptive strike on strategic targets like Hodeidah and Sana'a, areas held by the Houthis. If it continues rejecting talks and escalates tension, Iran could face isolation and devastating military consequences. The nuclear deal is no longer just technical. It's a test of will. Will Iran compromise for a stable future or gamble everything on defiance? Iran withdraws from Yemen. Houthis growing isolated. Recent reports show Iranian military advisors quietly withdrawing from Yemen, leaving the Houthis to fend for themselves. This may be a strategic prep move as Iran clears the board ahead of a deal with the U.S. Once strongly backed by Iran, the Houthis are now weakened, lacking both military and financial support. Abandoning the Houthis is not just tactical, it's a goodwill signal to the U.S., helping Iran cut political and military costs at a time of intense pressure. Post-deal scenario. Faint hope for regional stability. If the U.S. and Iran can reach a meaningful deal, the Red Sea, a vital trade route, might cool down. With weakened Houthis, restored shipping routes, and reduced conflict risk, tensions could temporarily ease. Yet, the U.S. will maintain a long-term military presence to ensure deterrence and prevent renewed escalation from Iran or allied groups. A deal may stabilize the region, but won't ensure lasting peace. The Middle East remains riddled with historical grudges, and any solution must be backed by lasting commitments. Not just paper agreements, but real-world action. The current situation is both an opportunity and a challenge. Tensions are razor-sharp, and one wrong move could ignite a widespread conflict.